this contiguous zone where the states have certain competences in respect of fiscal and health and other sanitary issues, and up to 12 nautical miles. But this is not an area, it's an area of jurisdiction, but it's not an area of sovereignty or sovereign rights, as it were. And we have beyond the territorial sea, from up to 200 miles, the exclusive economic zone of which I spoke. Here the sovereign rights of the coastal state to resources, that is fish, minerals, and jurisdiction over marine scientific research, and protection and preservation of the marine environment, which is different from the sovereignty that the state exercises in the 12 miles. And of course in the 12 miles is right of innocent passage. In this area beyond 12 miles, there is freedom of navigation and of overflight, freedom to lay cables and pipelines for all states. Coming here beyond the 200 miles, this is considered to be high seas in the cases where you do not have extended continental shelf. If you have extended continental shelf, then your jurisdiction for the resources in the continental shelf extends up to the outer limit of the continental shelf, which, as I said, is to be defined following surveys after consultation with the Commission on the Continental Shelf. Now, if the continental shelf doesn't extend up to here, then from here onwards it becomes the international seabed area. It comes under the administration of the International Seabed Authority. If it is, of course, extended, if you have extended continental shelf, then the international deep seabed area starts here. So this is just a graphic example of the result in terms of the different zones of jurisdiction. Please. Well, I already mentioned that for dispute settlement issues, the Convention provides for a tribunal for law of the sea, which is operational, and it is based in Hamburg. We have a commission on the limits of the continental shelf, and this sits in New York. These experts, as I said, examine the data and information provided to them in accordance with the convention by states who are claiming continental shelf beyond 200 miles. Brazil has submitted its data and information, and I think the Commission has not finally concluded on every aspect of the Brazilian claim, and they still continuing to consider the matter. And then you have the International Seabed Authority. These are 3 new institutions established by the Convention. I should mention that, of course, there are other technical bodies like IMO, FAO, UNESCO, IOC, which are outside the Convention, but which are recognized as technical bodies which implement different aspects of the Convention. But these are the new creations under the Convention. Next, please. Well, International Tribunal, I've already mentioned that this is to settle disputes which arise from the interpretation and application of the Convention, and it's headquartered in Germany and was established in '96. Commission on the limits of the continental shelf, as I've already described, its purpose is to examine the data and information submitted and to then come to agreement with the coastal state on the outer limits of that state. And then the state, following this consultation, declares its outer limit. International Seabed Authority. Well, this is, my colleagues are going to speak on this later, so I would not elaborate, except to say that it is an autonomous international organization established under the Convention. It's autonomous in the sense that it does not come under the United Nations. It stands alone. In juridical terms, it's like any other international body, and it has its own organizational structure, and its mandates are very clear, and my colleagues will tell you, except to say that this is the authority was established in implementation of the declaration that the resources of the seabed and the ocean floor beyond limits of national jurisdiction are the common heritage of mankind, and mankind as a whole must benefit. So the right to these resources cannot be claimed by anybody except through the authority, and the rights to the resources on behalf of mankind is vested in the authority. And this is the first experiment we have in international relations in creating an organization to manage the resources of the global commons. So this is quite a unique experiment in international relations. There's never been anything like this in the history of international relations. So it was quite a responsibility for the authority to be successful, to do things right, and to ensure that everybody respects and supports the work of the authority. Next, please. The main functions of the authority are to adopt rules and regulations for mining in the area, promote and encourage marine scientific research, and protect and conserve natural resources of the area, and prevent damage to flora and fauna. Now, I will not elaborate more on this because my colleague, next speaker, will deal with it. Next, please. Next, please. One more. Now, the authority has established an endowment fund. This is quite important, but especially for developing countries, because not many of the developing countries have the capacity to mine minerals or to research in the deep ocean. So we established an endowment fund to create opportunities for developing country personnel, qualified scientists and the technical personnel from developing countries, to participate in research programs and activities in the area, in the ocean, in the deep ocean. It also provides opportunities for the authority to collaborate with various programs which are for marine scientific research in the area by scientists which are from different institutions globally. And this is achieved through cooperation of national and international scientific institutions and contractors. We have just started this program. We're still trying to raise funds, so if anybody has extra funds, especially from Petrobras, perhaps they might find that the oil price might go up again, and they could spare some funds to support the endowment fund. We'll be very, very, of course, grateful. But the important thing is that scientific personnel from Brazil and other developing countries can benefit from this program, both in the use of state-of-the-art technology and methods of analyzing the samples, etc., which are current and which are where more developed countries, which are used by more developed countries. So this is an opportunity to provide something for all others who are not really involved in mining, and provide them with the opportunity to participate in some way in this common heritage area. Next, please. So new challenges for the law of the sea. An important feature of the convention is its capacity to adapt to new and changing circumstances. It allows for flexibility within its framework in the implementation of many of its provisions through competent international organizations such as the IMO, FAO, regional fisheries organizations and commissions, regional environmental programs, etc. In a few situations that have arisen, there was a requirement to further elaborate upon the convention provisions, and this was done in the case of, which I've already mentioned, in the case of two implementing agreements. The first one was adopted in '94 to resolve the outstanding issues relating to Part 11, the deep seabed mining regime, and the second was done in 1996 to implement provisions dealing with fisheries, straddling stocks, and highly migratory stocks, which is inspired by the Rio Declaration. So it just shows that we can, within the framework of the convention, deal with new issues, and we can be innovative in dealing with that without disturbing and without requiring an amendment to the basic document. But we could elaborate, or we could deal with these two issues, which are two issues of different kind. One was really to try to ameliorate the possibility of everyone joining the convention and removing some of the things which were objectionable to them. And the other one was really an elaboration of the existing principles in the Convention on Conservation and Management. So this is quite important mechanism for dealing with issues that arise as we go along. Next, please. Some current issues. Now, I have just only highlighted 3 issues here. There may be others that others would think of. The first is that, as you know, the fisheries sector has suffered greatly. Those of us who were negotiating in the conference, we thought by establishing a 200-mile economic zone, we will encourage states to better manage the fish resources that they have in that zone, because it belongs to them, and to be sure that just they don't allow excessive fishing in the area and deplete their stocks, because they would want to serve the resources to serve generations of their people. But experience has shown that we have all been very irresponsible. Almost 80% of the fish in the sea is within this 200-mile zone. In fact, even in a lesser distance. And you'll find that most of the significant stocks around the world have been destroyed, because we have allowed, for political reasons or other reasons or mismanagement, excessive fishing in our own zones. And today, many valuable fish stocks have been depleted or are in threat of depletion. So this has become an issue, and I'll deal with that next. The next issue is the action to be taken to protect biodiversity in the Old Ocean, and then how to deal with so-called genetic resources of the oceans. Next, please. The ecosystem issue, as I've said, is the main goal is to ensure sustainability of catches without compromising the inherent structure and functioning of the marine ecosystem. The convention refers to this, and it talks about dependent species, which means the surrounding the environment in which the fish are found. That we have to ensure that in our conduct of fisheries we do not destroy the dependent species in the sea. It requires, so in order to implement the ecosystem-based principles, it requires much more data and information about ecological relationships and the impact of human activities than in single species management regimes. It also requires greater regional integration and more coordinated approach at global level. For example, the data collected and scientific analysis of large marine ecosystem. The data collection and scientific analysis of the large marine ecosystem. Next, please. Protection of marine biodiversity. This has become a major concern, and it was discussed at the Rio conference, so I'm glad that we're discussing it, or at least drawing your attention here. There is a need for action to reduce the current rate of biodiversity loss for benefit of all life on Earth. The need is compelling because many marine species and ecosystems are poorly understood and are subjected to rapid increase in the level of anthropogenic impacts, such as coastal area population growth, bad fishing practices, and impacts such as climate change. Calls for establishment of marine protected areas is a response to this particular concern. This has to be balanced with competing uses of the oceans, including the mandate of the International Seabed Authority, which is to administer and promote the development of the mineral resources of the deep seabed. Next. Now, as far as marine genetic resources is concerned, the management of marine genetic resources has become a prominent issue in recent times in the discussions of the United Nations and in other bodies. I've tried to simplify some of the issues. The issues are multifaceted. They concern it concerns that there are concerns on the impact on the marine environment of the recovery of genetic resources. There are concerns concerning fair access to genetic resources for less technologically advanced states. And there is the issue of sharing of the financial and other benefits derived from genetic resources. Some of the discussions, sort of behind some of the discussions, is the example of this marine resources of the deep seabed, which was declared common heritage. So, and was to be developed for the benefit of mankind. So there is a sort of, in some minds, parallel to these to genetic resources, which may become quite lucrative for pharmaceutical companies, etc. But this is again an evolving situation. We don't really know what we're talking about, and we don't really know what we want out of that. But the discussion, nevertheless, is current. There is lack of environmental regulations of unrestrained scientific activity, and this is again an issue. In the case of Seabed Authority, for instance, we provide in our regulations that anyone who wants to mine minerals must adhere to very strict rules concerning the marine environment, and we give them guidelines. We also prescribe in the contract rules that they must observe at every stage of the development of the resources. But the scientists in the international area who are just going there for science have no regulations to adhere to. They can, sometimes a group of scientists are observing something in a particular area, and then other scientists come and disturb it so that the observation is disturbed, and you don't really get good results. But in any case, the unrestrained scientific activity can be detrimental to the environment as well. Next, please. Thank you very much. This is my presentation.